So the topic that was on here originally was how to be a change agent. So we're going to, of course, stay within that guidelines. But I'm going to change it up a little bit, make it hopefully a little bit more interesting. But first, I wanted to just kind of acknowledge the work that everyone has been doing with IT transformation. It's so much bigger than just IT. I was just in the back sitting with some folks, and they weren't really in IT. They were really part of the state, and they're here to be part of this transformation process. I don't know if some of you have seen this characters before, or this saying, Ichigo Ichi. It actually comes from, you see quite a bit in martial arts, but it primarily comes from tea ceremonies back in the 1600s in Japan. And the mindset behind this philosophy was that every moment is precious. That when the host is preparing for the tea ceremony, they treat it like this moment will never happen again. It is a once-in-a-lifetime moment. And though people will come together again and again, that moment will never happen again exactly that way. And so even the guests who come understand that and treat that moment, and they bring all of themselves to that special moment. I think we here in Hawaii have, through the transformation process, a kind of an Ichigo Ichi moment where we have this unique opportunity that will never come again, and that we're going to be part of something much bigger. And so hopefully this, as we go through it, this will all make sense as we go more along. When the team from Oceanit came to me and said that we were going to talk about change, I thought, this is going to be awesome, because we live change every day at Oceanit. It's all about change. I calculated a while back that we do about one new major innovation every month starts at Oceanit. So I thought, this is going to be easy. We're going to do this talk. And part of it is we kind of feel like this a lot of times. I don't know if you know this character, Gumby, and my boss, Pat Sullivan, is here. He may be the horse, which is Pokey. But we all feel like Gumby, and Gumby is very flexible and adaptable and moldable and changeable to change. And so very much, I think we feel like that, and we kind of live this thing that I think everyone kind of doesn't like, which is change. These are hopefully 5 takeaways you'll get from today. I'm hoping to get, as I'm looking at my other screen here, that change is certain. So a lot of these things you see on here, it's like you've seen it before. It's very obvious, right? It's like these are very fundamental things. But in practice, they're very hard to do. I think we've seen, like change is certain, and adaptability. Like adaptability, it trumps S3, which in my short thing is speed, smarts, and strengths. Plan, but be ready to adapt. All of these things are kind of cliche almost, because they're actually very hard to do. Okay, so we'll go through it, and hopefully at the end, I'm just going to tell you how do you become more adaptable, because that's really how I kind of want to change it up a bit. Now, when I started really working on this talk about change, I really realized that this is really hard. I don't know if you ever had to do a talk about change, but it's really hard. And actually, what it reminded me of is change is feels like death and taxes. Nobody wants to talk about it, right? If you really think about it. But change, like death and taxes, is a certainty. It's going to keep happening. So the question is, how do we respond and adapt to the constant change in realities that we're going to go through? So the talk is about change, and this is my friend Darwin. And if you remember what he didn't say, it's not the S3s, right? It's not the smartest, strongest, smartest that survive, right? It's the ones that are most responsive to change. So instead of talking about change so much today, I want to talk about how to be more adaptable. Like how do you become better at adapting to change? Because that's really what I think is what we all want to know. So, do you know what this picture is of? Anybody? Stairway to Heaven. Okay. How many people have done the Stairway to Heaven? Okay, so Arnold, when did you do it? Okay, so you're illegal. Okay, so who did it like in the 80s? Anybody did it in the 80s? Oh, all right, brother, back there. So me too. I did this when it was legal, before 1987, right? And this thing was built, and it's the Stairway to Heaven, right? It's literally these stairs that go along the Kola Mountains, and you can actually see it. If you're on H3, I don't know if you ever drive H3, as you're coming through the tunnels heading to Kaneohe, and you're on the H3, you can actually see these stairs. It's absolutely beautiful. You see it on the side of the thing, and it's beautiful, and it's actually terrifying too when you see these things, because it is crazy high. Let me see here. So I'm going to tell you a story, my story, about doing this climb like back in the 80s. But I'm also going to combine it with information and research that comes out of this book called Deep Survival. And if you've not read this book, I tell you, it is one of the best books you'll read about, not so much about why people die and survive, but just the psychology of what happens in extreme conditions. Because this book is about why the people in this book, none of these people should have died or been injured, because they had the best of everything. They had the best planning. They took their time. They had the best resources. They had the most experienced people. They had the best support teams money and time experience could buy. They had it all, but they still failed. So when you want to learn about, and this has great relevance, I think, to large implementations, large systems, everything, you want to learn about why things don't work, read this book. You will learn a lot. I've learned a lot from it. So part of it is I'm going to share some of the research that's in here as I kind of tell this story, okay? So the first concept in kind of one of the first concepts is like planning. So of course you got to plan, right? And when I did this hike, there were 4 friends. We both worked at this Shell gas station while we were in college. So we could see the Stairway to Heaven in Kaneohe. I lived in Kaneohe, I was going to school, and we could see it every day, and we would say, you know what, we're going to take this hike. So finally we decided to make a plan. And in many ways, our plan wasn't a plan, because we didn't think it through. We took no jackets, no water, no nothing. The only thing we took was my camera to document our stupidity when we got to the top. So we didn't really have a plan. We assumed it was going to be a nice day, right? It's beautiful. And think, oh, we're going to get to the top. And you know what? It's going to be easy because we're young, we're fit, you know. How hard can this be? And it's stairs, right? It's just stairs to the top, right? So here we go. All right, so we go on to the top. Now, a plan is about predicting the future, right? So one of the first things that was happening is the plan wasn't turning out the way we thought. Because as we started going up, it was actually a lot tougher and wetter and colder and slower than we anticipated. But the thing is, we could see the goal, right? We could see the goal to get to the top. And this is part of the psychology. The emotional pull to get to the top overrode anything we saw. If the weather was getting bad and we were getting tired, it didn't matter because what was important was getting to the top. And I don't know if any of you have ever climbed stairs before. You know, like, you got to climb some stairs, in your office building, right? But imagine climbing stairs for 2 hours. 2 hours. It's brutal. I don't care how old you are, or how young you are, or how fit you are, it's brutal. And we were huffing and puffing and using our arms and everything we had, but and mentally, we had to be really on it, right? And we kept looking up at this thing and going, we're going to get to the top, right? Now, actually what happened is one of our guys, we assumed we were all going to make it, but actually one of our friends was a little bit less in shape. So about halfway, but you could see it. Along the way, he was already suffering, but he was pushing super hard. But eventually, we had to stop him and say, you know what, you got to stop and go back down, right? So we had to literally stop him, and then the 3 of us continued to go up. So we get to the top. Boom. We're super happy, right? We're high-fiving, we're taking pictures, and all the things you do when you reach your goal, right? You're just so happy. But at the same time, unknowingly, a lot of things are happening to your body and your mind. You're not as sharp anymore, right? You're kind of letting down your guard. You're not really paying attention to what's going on. And physically, we had expended most of our energy just to get to the top, right? It was so much harder than we anticipated, right? So we get to the top, and I look around, and I realize, you know what? There's another top. There's the real top. We thought we were at the top, but we weren't. And actually, the trail that led to the real top was so crazy, bad in shape, it was dangerous. Like I was afraid. I was like, oh, this is really dangerous. But you know what? The goal, the emotional goal to get to the top was more important. So we said, screw this, we're going to just go. And so we went, and we got to the other top, right? And that's not me, that's my friend. One thing we did do, we planned for, is we made a flag. You always got to have a flag. When you get to your top of your mountain, you get to your goal, right? So we had a flag, and you can see the head of my other friend coming up the stairs who was really dying as well. So here we are, we're all on the top, right? But here's the thing about in deep survival, what you learn. When you get to the top, that's only halfway. And people die and get injured on the way down, not on the way up so much. Because physically, mentally, you're so exhausted, and you thought the top was the goal. But the reality is, the top wasn't the goal. The real goal is to get to the bottom, right? Remember JFK when he said, we're going to put a man on the moon? That wasn't correct, right? I always say that, put the man on the moon. That wasn't the goal, right? What was the real goal? Bring him back. Because it would have been easy to just say, hey, Buzz, you know what? We're going to give you a first-class ticket, one way, going to be like 1,000 times easier for us, but sorry. Bringing them back is hard. Getting down, technically, from a climber standpoint, is much, much more difficult, right? So, it's only halfway, right? Now, oh, I gotta show this. Can you see that picture? So when I was up there, as we were just jubilating and like so high, like we made it to the top, I looked around and I looked back the way we came, and I panicked. I totally panicked. Because going down is really different than coming up. Coming up was pretty scary, but going down now was totally insane. Because this is what it looks like. Have you ever climbed up a ladder? It's kind of scary, just climbing up a ladder, right? It's pretty wide, but you know, your feet plant, and before you shift your weight, you're pretty secure. It's scary, but you can get up a ladder. Now, what happens when you get on the roof of your house on the ladder? That's when it gets scary, right? When you turn around and you come to the ledge that has no railing, right? And that's only like 15 feet off the ground on your roof, right? You know that feeling? You look over the edge, but imagine the edge is like 50 feet down. And the ladder doesn't come all the way up to your chest and you can get on top. The ladder is on the ledge, 50 feet down. That ladder feels like 2 inches wide. And you can see these 3 guys, we're all kind of looking at the ladders and things going, how the hell are we gonna get on this ladder? It's really frightening right now. So, you know, the question is, so what does all this have to do with IT transformation and the transformation project, right? Like, what are you talking about, climbing and dying and, all this stuff? This is gonna make sense a little bit more once I add this one more concept. So I'm gonna show you a framework. And most of us, or a lot of us, are technologists in the room, right? And so actually, when you're a technologist, you think that the technical element is probably the biggest element in the whole project, right? It's like, I don't know, 80%? I don't know. That's how I used to think, like, wow, that's a big part of it. But in reality, like in the climb, right, it's not just the up, it's the down. And this is the down. And this is the part that we always get trouble in. Business and the human element. And normally, we way underestimate the human element in a project, right? This is the danger side, right? So how does this all play out? I'm not following my notes here. So how does this all play out? So on the technical side is more like going up to the top. It's only halfway, right? It's only halfway. And by the way, climbers are the only sportsmen who actually celebrate when they're only halfway through their goal, when there's still the most dangerous part to still traverse, which is the downside. And I'll tell you that I believe that the human element piece of what we do is this downside piece. And we cannot forget it and how important it is, okay? So here's the 5 takeaways, right? so change is certain. Yeah, it's like death and taxes. But it's how do we adapt to that change? Adaptability trumps, I think, S3, speed, strengths, and smarts, which kind of explains my existence at Oceanit, I think, because there's a lot of smart guys there. Plan, but be ready to adapt. And you know, this idea of plan to adapt, when you read Deep Survival, the people who actually die are some of the most experienced people, because they're so experienced, and they relied on your planning so much that in the face of reality, that they created the plan, right? They created this plan for some reality, but the reality is so different now. But for whatever reason, they didn't change the plan. What they expected was the reality to eventually change to their plan. And in extreme cases of mountain climbing, and in what you find in this book, those things actually get you into trouble very, very quickly. So that's why that book is so interesting, because it's in such extreme conditions you learn about why things fail. But you have to be ready to adapt. And you know, there's so many examples of companies that are very strong, very powerful, very fast, but didn't adapt. And examples are like Kodak, and you can name them. Blockbuster Video, they're no longer around. So Google, Microsoft, Facebook, if they don't adapt, it doesn't matter how strong they are. They eventually won't survive either. You have to be able to adapt. So this last part is about how do you become more adaptable, okay? So how do you become more adaptable? So, did I miss a slide here? Okay, so the reason why I bring up these slides is we go to school, and our work experience teaches us these technical, a lot of times the technical and the business elements. The hard part is, where do you get training to do the human part, right? Where do you learn that stuff, right? So a few years ago, we really started getting into this at Oceanit, and we kind of met up with David. This guy is David Kelly. He's the founder of IDEO, very famous product design firm, as well as the Design School at Stanford, where they teach this stuff. Right, and this is his quote, make the human element as important as the technical and business elements. And so David created a process called design thinking, and it's these 5 steps, but we also incorporate the tools of organizational change management in the work that we do. Think of these as the gear in your pack as you go climbing and as you come down. These are all the tools that you can use to do this kind of work. What David did was he took the process of creativity, innovation, in many ways of how to be more adaptable, and made it into a process that you can teach and you can learn. The whole value of this stuff is that everybody can learn this stuff. You can learn the process so you can learn to be more responsive and adaptive. And it's basically these 5 basic steps. Here's one way to look at it. So in more traditional thinking, we place a lot of emphasis on the technical side. In design thinking, we don't ignore the technical or the business. We just add and make sure that the human element is as important as the business and technical elements. We have a plan. Yes, everyone else have a plan, but we also have an emphasis on how to adapt. We focus a lot of times on looking for answers in more traditional thinking. In design thinking, we focus on how do you create and create the right answers so that you can get better answers. So create better questions to get better answers. The difference between designing for and designing with somebody is very subtle, but it's a big difference. Requirements are important, but also needs of users are very important as well. Quantitative, very important. But in design thinking, we also add the component of qualitative. And that's, in many ways, where you'll find the great, I know my time is running out here. Oops, sorry. where you'll find a lot of the solutions you're looking for. Many times it's a solo climb versus you want a team climb. In the story I was telling you, there was, if I told you a little bit more, you would have realized that we were creating our own disaster waiting to happen on that mountain, because as we were coming down, we were literally on top of each other coming down those stairs, right? And if you're a systems person, you can kind of figure this out. If one of us tripped, right, it would be a total disaster. And in fact, the guy on the top is the guy that cannot fall. And the other thing too is that there are people coming up that we couldn't see either. So we had a catastrophe always happening. And just because something doesn't happen, an accident doesn't happen, doesn't mean it won't. That's why I'm so surprised that there hasn't been more disasters up there on those stairs. Lastly, on this, a lot of times everything is personality driven. Design thinking and OCM are tools that you use to empower your people so that they can do the work. So here's my buddy again, and what's so exciting about what he said, in my opinion, is that you can, by being more adaptable and more responsive, you can be wildly successful. You can create wildly successful projects. And there's a way to learn how to be more adaptable through design thinking and OCM tools. And then lastly, this is going back to Ichigo Ichi. It's such a great opportunity. I know it's hard because a lot of us are, we're very much deep into the projects. A lot of the things that we will do, we will never kind of see the results. William James, this guy William James, a Harvard philosopher, I always forget his name, but I remember his quote. He says, "The greatest use of a life is to use it for something that will outlast it." And I think we have this great opportunity with the IT transformation project. This is a translation of Ichigo Ichi. I'll just let you read it. And I think of it as, this is our time, our one chance. And I want to thank you all again. We look forward to working with everyone in the room in the years to come, and happy holidays. Thank you.